Welcome everyone to the first panel of our meeting. The panel, as the title goes, Science as a Source of Knowledge versus Non-Scientific, Pseudoscientific, and Parascientific Beliefs. Now, that's a very broad topic, right? So what we thought we would do to try and focus the discussion a little bit is to focus on the question of public trust in science, whether there's a crisis in that, and whether that is important in what ways. Now, we planned to have 4 speakers. Unfortunately, one of our speakers, Sanal Adamaruku, has not been able to make it here. So in fact, we're going to have 3 speakers today. Dr. Tomasz Witkowski, who is a Polish psychologist. Then we have Sami Ablallah, who is a Lebanese activist and physicist. And finally, Professor Ewa Bartnik, who is a Polish geneticist. I myself am Konrad Talmont-Kamiński. I run the Society and Cognition Unit at the University of Białystok in Poland. And at this unit, we actually study the cognitive and social basis for religious and also scientific beliefs and practices. Just a little bit of advertising. If people are interested in participating in our work, where we do psychological experiments, we do analysis of sociological data, and we also actually build agent-based models of social phenomena, please feel free to have a look at our website and also write to the email on the screen right now. The big project we've got right now is an international project where we're trying to explain secularization, to try and understand the basis of secularization. All right, but today's topic. Is there a crisis in public trust in science? Now, I looked at data from the Pew Research Group, which is one of the most significant research groups looking at public opinion around the world, and the numbers don't appear to be so bad at all. Right, here they are. This is from 2020. As you can see, in some countries, you've got up to 80% of people who express that they have at least some trust in science. In Poland, numbers are somewhat lower. We're talking about, what is this, 50, 60, 70, about 75%. Right, still fairly high, right? So at least looking at these numbers, you would think that faith in science, trust in science, is something that is still holding up pretty well, right? But then, of course, you have to think about particular concrete examples about whether people trust in science when it comes to such things as COVID, as climate change, and other similar examples. Right, where there seems to be a much more complex situation. And then, of course, we also have to think about the actions of particular agents, right? Specifically, I'm thinking of the well-shown evidence, quite thorough evidence, that Russia has been spreading disinformation, including disinformation about COVID, about climate change, and so on and so forth. Right, where, of course, it is now able to do that to a greater degree than it was able to earlier, thanks to social media. Right, so we have these different things going on. And then, of course, we have to think about the way in which the kind of attitude that you get from a lot of governments towards science. And here I'm going to use a local example. This figure will be familiar to a lot of people. This is the Polish minister. I see, yes, a lot of smiling faces, shall we say. The Polish Minister for Science and Education, Czarnek, who just recently openly stated that he would make sure that science funding was granted on an ideological basis. Now, this is obviously a problem. But an even bigger problem, because it's a systemic problem, is the fact that he remains the minister. At the same time, right, we have to think about what are we talking about? I mean, we're looking at current situation where we're all very much aware of the issues and difficulties that are current, but think about the historical context. A greater number of people currently are doing science than have ever done previously, right? So is there a crisis in trust in science? Well, for that, I turn to the speakers, where the first speaker is, of course, going to be Tomasz Witkowski. Please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, sometime in the mid-1970s, when I was a schoolboy, teachers encouraged us to draw the world in the future, in the year 2000, on 100 year. And we filled hectares of paper with drawings of hovercraft, cosmic rockets, glass houses. In the future, everything seemed clean, healthy, safe, and easy. And we believed in science. But 50 years later, there are no hovercraft on our streets, no space trips in the offers of touristic agencies, and there are no glass houses. Instead, people in my country destroy mobile antennas out of fear of 5G technology. They set vaccination points on fire. And some of them pass the death sentence to the Minister of Health. This fear of science and denial of science is characteristic not only of my country. It's booming around the world. So the question is, what went wrong? In my opinion, there are two main reasons for this phenomenon. The first is exponential growth of scientific knowledge. This graph shows you the number of scientific publications in only in last 50 years. In the middle of the 20th century, the number of scientific discoveries and scientific facts was growing at such a rate that even people interested in science lost trust of it, lost track of it, and felt lost. And then the era of postmodernism came. Its prophets challenged what was the basis of science for nearly 2,500 years. I mean, the Aristotle's concept of truth, based on the assumption that reality exists, that empirical reality exists and is knowable, and that the basic laws of logic allow us to explain it and to formulate adequate description of it. It was postmodernism who challenged science, who reduced science to linguistic constructs and equated it with other worldviews. What is worse, this equality of all, even the most ridiculous views, has taken root in education as well. And this explains why today an anti-vaxxer challenges the statements of a microbiology professor and celebrity challenges the statements of a quantum physicist, for example. And this is also explained the scale of scientific denial. And in my opinion, unless we will return to the conviction, to the belief that reality exists, what was true for nearly 2,500 years, we will live in a world that will be dominated by irrational, pseudoscientific, and religious views. Thank you.
Thank you. Sami, if you could please continue.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sami Ablallah. I come from a country called Lebanon. And before we jump into the topic of discussion, I thought maybe I can use these 5 minutes to give a general overview of the country I come from and the state of science in this country. So I'm going to start by reading a little quote by critical writer Robert Fisk. This was after his visit to Lebanon, and he said, "It may have beautiful mountains, fine food, an extraordinarily well-educated population, but it's sectarian. It's a bit like owning a Rolls Royce, complete with fresh leather seats, a flat screen television, and a cocktail bar, but with square wheels. It doesn't work." And that's the story of Lebanon in one sentence. So Lebanon is a very small country. It has an area of 10,000 kilometers squared, a population of 6.8 million people, only 4 million of which are Lebanese, and the others are other nationalities. The capital is Beirut, and we had our independence from the French Mandate in the year 1943. We are founding member of the United Nations, of the Arab League, and we have participated in the creation and drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the year 1948. So one of the biggest events that happened in the history of Lebanon is the civil war, which we had in 1975. Many people today think that Lebanon is a Muslim country. This is not really true. There's a little bit more Muslims than Christians in Lebanon, and the civil war happened between these two religions, and it lasted for 15 years. It was fueled by religious conflict and resulted in an estimate of 120,000 fatalities. But Lebanon managed to survive at the end. Some people say the civil war ended, but I think it didn't end. There was only a ceasefire, but you can still see the consequences of this war until today. And the result today, we have 18 recognized sects of Abrahamic religions, among which all positions of power are divided. So what does that mean? This means if you want to be a president, you can only be so if you are Christian Maronite. And if you want to be a prime minister, you have to be a Muslim Sunni. If you want to be the Minister of Agriculture, it doesn't matter if you have a degree in agriculture. All what matters is that you are Muslim Shia. And this was the beginning of the end of this country. Today, non-religious groups are not recognized in Lebanon until today, and there's no recognition for atheists, and the word atheist is still generally seen as a taboo. And the sectarian power division has led to the collapse of the country on almost all levels. So this is a picture taken from next to the poor, this huge explosion that happened a few years ago. And people had written, "My government did this." This is the result of this sectarian system, when non-qualified people are taking the lead just because they belong to certain religions. This happens, a huge collapse on all levels. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about science in Lebanon. I'm going to be quoting some findings that I found in some studies. I'm not going to be citing those studies, so I'm going to ask you to trust me. And if somebody wants the references, I can share them at the end. So this is based on a big survey that was done. Students, they like and appreciate science class. However, they are still highly affected by religious beliefs. Religion has an influence on Lebanese science curriculum, and this is a very big problem we have. As I said, all of the power is divided among religions, and one of the consequences of this is that these religions, they decide what's on the curriculum. For example, evolution is not taught, for this reason, and not only evolution, many other things, not to mention that religion is being taught in most schools. So this is based on another survey with 12,000 people. So most high school students thought that God created all life about 10,000 years ago, and that their families thought that too. Another finding was that the conception of evolution is significantly affected by religiosity. And I will discuss this a little bit in a second. An interesting survey that was done on over than one country, and this shows the effect of education. So in countries where evolution is not taught, like Lebanon, India, and Malaysia, these countries, they had theistic conceptions of the origin of Earth compared to other countries like UK and Netherlands, for example, where it was taught. And this shows the importance of education. Finally, and this is a very important point, some of the studies showed that the acceptance of evolution is related to religiosity and not religious affiliation. So what does that mean? In Lebanon, so they noticed that whether people were Christian or Muslim didn't really matter. What mattered is how religious they are. So Muslims who were more on the secular side, they were almost the same as Christians who were on the secular side as well. So it's just the level of religiosity. Now I'm gonna just cite, to give you a little overview, like just some examples of myths that are still practiced in Lebanon until today. So the first of which, a soil gathered from the tomb of a Maronite Christian saint can prevent and cure COVID. And you can see here in the pictures, there are spoons put in the soil. And very sadly, I don't know, people went crazy during COVID, and then some of the hospitals were allowing people to take this soil into the hospital, which is a huge, they were breaking the protocol of these hospitals. But this is what happens when people are in panic mode. Similarly, on the Muslim side, there's a very similar belief of some miraculous soil that comes from the tomb of Al-Hussein. This is a Muslim Shiite imam. This soil cures cancer and other diseases. And if you see what people do with this soil, you wouldn't believe it. They go to the hospitals, they put it in the infusion, they digest it. And this is very commonly practiced, I would say, among the Shia Muslims. Holy pens, this is... many of my friends at school, they used to believe in this, that if you bless your pens by clergies or in holy places, they can help you to pass your exams. And yeah, some students used to keep their pens for years and years because this pen has traveled the world from this tomb to that tomb, and that's crazy. This is very weird to see that this still happens until today. So like rubbing the blood of a bat on a newborn, they stop the body hair growth. And this is still practiced. And people are still selling and buying this blood of a bat because nobody's gonna get a bath and kill it. And similarly, there's a belief that if you rub salt and water on a body, then this slows the, affects the sweat glands, so the baby wouldn't be sweating when they grow old. And finally, this is also very common. When you compliment somebody, you should mention God, a saint, or a sacred object, like in the name of the cross or mashallah, for example. And if you don't do so, you can jinx them. And people would actually be pissed at you if you tell them, oh, what a beautiful haircut. And then you just stop there. Then somebody would come and say, in the name of the cross or mashallah or something like this. As you see, most of those beliefs and practices, they are religion-based. And this shows that one of the biggest drives to superstition is religion. So is it getting better? It's not an easy question to answer. I think change requires two factors. It requires political and a cultural change. I'm happy that we are witnessing a cultural change in Lebanon. You can see more interest in science. You can see people they know better how to fact check. But I think the problem is the politics, and the political change in Lebanon will still take quite a while, but at least I'm happy that there is some cultural change. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. And finally, Professor Binczak.
I've spent a lot of my life showing PowerPoint presentations. You will not get one today. And I wanted to be the last person we were supposed to be for to sort of react. But I think what I will speak about are things that I know because I have, in addition to being a university professor for the last 30 years, I have also been involved in some educational programs, such as the international program of OECD program of international student assessment, which is a test done for 15-year-olds to see what they learned in school. So I'll start with education. The problem, I think, with trust in science is that people finish school without the vaguest idea what science is. What is taught in schools is what we know. Very rarely is anything mentioned about the fact that science isn't sort of there in the textbook. What is in science, what's interesting, is what we don't know, what we're studying. And at least in Poland, science is not really taught as science. It's taught as a set of things to memorize, or a set of experiments where what you do is you put one plant in the cupboard and one plant on the windowsill, and you know what is supposed to come out of it, because we all know that plants need sunlight to make chlorophyll, and if they're sitting in a cupboard, they'll probably drop dead. So the problem is with science education, I'm not quite sure what can be done about it. Actually, I attended an American school as a kid, and in the 60s, there was a very interesting scientific program in the United States, a special kind of program made by Nobel Prize winners. My chemistry course was 5 hours of experiments and 1 hour of theory. And perhaps that would be a solution. Of course, I'm not going, I'm just mentioning this, but education does not prepare people for the life in the real world. We are attacked by all kinds of advertisements. You can find things about, I don't know, test your genes and you'll know what to eat to be more intelligent, what kind of sport you should do, and so on. I'm a geneticist. This is absolute. Nonsense would probably be too kind a word to describe it. So this is what we are attacked by. And the problem is that for some reason, this sort of cumulative effect of poor education has given people a lack of trust in science. And this lack of trust in science is compounded by the fact that anyone can be an expert. Dr. Witkowski mentioned the fact that anyone can be as good as a university professor. We are not all that good, I guess. Some of us are dumb also, but I mean, that is in any profession you'll have people who shouldn't talk about things they know nothing about, but somehow they have to. So I've witnessed quite a lot of changes in our scientific knowledge. And yesterday I was doing a radio interview on phone about genetics, and I was asked was I thought genetic engineering was dangerous. No, genetic engineering has been with us from the late 70s. We have hepatitis B vaccines, insulin, growth hormone. I mean, I'm not going to make a long list. The point is that anyone can still ask this question now means that no one really knows anything much about how science works. Genetically modified organisms, for some reason, in Europe are an object of fear for no reason whatsoever. The anti-vaccine movement started sort of earlier than now. Now it was particularly strong, but I remember in the 80s we were in Germany as postdocs, my husband and I and our daughter. She went to a kindergarten, and that was the first sort of weird round of opposition to whooping cough vaccine. And kids were getting sick in the kindergarten. My daughter had been vaccinated in Poland, so that was not a problem. And I have never found this in any journal, but Princess Diana of Wales went and got her sons vaccinated. That stopped things for a while. The problem is that very few influencers take a responsibility for what they do. They have beliefs which are unfounded, and they go and proclaim them. So we have poor education, we have incredible access to information without any kind of real filters for the information, because most people do not know what science is. So if a nice influencer who looks great and gives great advice on how to, I don't know, exercise or whatever, will say she's not vaccinating her kids, people will believe her more than they will believe me. And I think the last thing I want to address, because we'll have more chances to talk, is the question of experts. In Poland, during the pandemic, which is still with us to some extent, I mean, the virus did not drop dead, unfortunately, but a lot of us have been vaccinated, a lot of us have been ill, so there is some resistance built up. But there was a professor of botany, I think, who made all kinds of ridiculous claims about what the vaccine does to fertility and other things. And there were all kinds of information going on. And the point is, the press will publish anything which is sensational. The information that the vaccines are good for you, they protect you for 6 months or so, that's not sensational. And the last thing I want to mention, 2 things that happened last week which show that experts really do not fulfill their role. One of a fairly well-known Polish pathologist, Paulina Łopatniuk, who writes an excellent blog about pathology and has published 2 very, very interesting books. She couldn't sleep about a week ago, and she went on page which is devoted to science by people who are proponents of science. I mean, it should be scientific. What she found was a long 30-minute film about traditional Chinese medicine without any kind of comment. So she wrote to them. They had to have a special meeting. There was not one person who would say, what happened, how awful. They had a meeting. They published something about comments. But still, this is something that should not happen. And the second thing that happened during the last week was that our National Health Service published a booklet about healthy foods and what you should eat. The point is that they got their information from someone, I don't know who. They consulted with an expert who was a psychodietitian. And there were all sorts of things, like you shouldn't eat fruit with your meals, and you should, I don't know, always have an egg with your sorrel soup because it helps the calcium. So anyway, they retracted it after my acquaintance protested. But the point is, you get information even from sources which should know what they're doing, which is also junk. So we are uneducated, we have too much information, and we cannot trust the experts. So I think we are in a bad situation, and perhaps we can talk more about what can be done about that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I wanted to open the discussion, and perhaps the question that I would ask everyone here is, I mean, the numbers that I was showing originally, right, and the way that we focused the discussion on particular topics, right, I mean, there are clearly areas where people don't listen to science, they don't trust science to a sufficient degree. Vaccination, of course, is a very important recent example, right? At the same time, it seems that broadly speaking, right, people are willing at least to say that, yes, they do trust science. So what's going on? Why do we have these particular topics, perhaps the most important topics, where the trust is not there?
The point is that there is a huge difference between declaration and behavior. And this is a main problem in psychology, that what we try to understand, we use paper questionnaires or computer questionnaires, and we ask people, how would you do if, and so on and so on. But when we do experiments, and in one group, we ask people what they would do in this situation. And for another group, we arrange situation, let's say in the field, somewhere in natural conditions, and we observe what people really do in this situation. There are 2 different words and 2 different results. So if we see such nice statistics on our screens, it's a declaration, pure declaration. It's the same like you would ask religious people, are you religious? Yes. Do you go to the church? Sometimes. How often? Once a year, let's say. This is a declaration, and behavior is what we really need to understand. And much too often we see research results which are just a declaration and just empty declarations.
Right.
Maybe just to add something. This thing was for Europe and the world. But if you look at other questions, 80% of people in some state in the United States would like to have everything which is DNA labeled. 60% of Europeans, a few years ago, it probably hasn't changed, believed that only genetically modified organisms contain DNA. And in 2006, because I was reading a book by Francis Collins, who was the head of the Human Genome Project, 45% of Americans believed something that was mentioned here, you mentioned in Lebanon, that God created the world 5,000 years ago. So, but if you ask them if they believe in science, probably the percentage would be much higher.
So, just trying to analyze what is going wrong, I think there's a problem of lack of understanding of science and how science works. One part of this problem is the complexity of science itself. We are making a lot of publications, but are we able to deliver the information to the people? I would say not much. And the second problem is the lack of understanding of how the body of science works on its own. And I would give an example here of my father. He's a very religious person, and he doesn't trust science. When I try to discuss this with him, he says that every time there's a theory and then it's negated and then there's a new theory. And he talks about Newton and Einstein, how we believed in Newton's gravity, and then Einstein came and changed this. But this shows a deep lack of understanding of science as a body, that science is a continuum. It doesn't work. You cannot get all information at the same time. It goes through generations. And the work of Einstein does not negate the work of Newton, just people think so. You know, it's just a continuation of this work. So I think this is a very common problem, and I would, of course, blame mostly education, what Professor Eva said, that the way education, the way science is taught is by memorizing and not by truly understanding. There's nothing taught about critical thinking, for example. We don't teach people how to think, we just teach them, this is like the subject, you have to memorize biology, you have to memorize physics. Thank you.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk about education, right? Because I mean, this is a topic we keep on coming back to. I mean, you know, we've spent decades learning how to do science, right? It's not easy, right? So, is it even a realistic thing to talk about having the general populace understand how science is done, right? Is this something that can at all possibly be achieved? Or should we be looking at the relationship between science, scientists, and the general populace in other terms?
In my introduction, I mentioned postmodernism, not by accident. I mean, last decades in education everywhere, we are concentrated more on teaching tolerance to all worldviews, however they would be irrational. We are taught to be tolerant to one religion, another religion. We have around 10,000 religions in the world. Each of them is, of course, true as and is the most important. But we should be tolerant to all these worldviews. And children in school now are educated that they expect from others tolerance to their irrational beliefs, because they are taught that they are equal to scientific views. So the problem is even not religion, because religion is, in my opinion, is the second problem. The problem is denying objective empirical reality. If we allow to think in terms of another realities, something like religious, mystical, and whatever, New Age, and so on, we allow to die science in this way, because this is denying of reality, and children choose between believing in reality, in experiments, in empirical, methodological methods of describing reality, or thinking about reality as something deep, mystical, and whatever. And in my opinion, this is a problem of West civilization now. The equation of all world views independent of reality.
I will give an example of that, but then I'll try to give a different opinion. I had a discussion about autism vaccines, a very popular subject, as we all know, with someone who is a physical education specialist. And he wrote that 350 mothers had been filled in a questionnaire. They believe that their children are autistic because of the vaccines. I sent him a link to a study of 1.5 million cases where it was shown it was not true. And his answer was, we are both entitled to our opinion. So this is the point that, I mean, if your opinion is so strong that there's no way, no fact that can perturb the opinion, I mean, we're lost. But I have a somewhat different approach to teaching and to science. There's a French program for kids, or there was one, which Georges Charpak was a Nobel Prize winner initiated, and it started in kindergarten. So the kids would have scientific problems to solve, very simple ones, like, I don't know, they left red candy on the table, they came back to the kindergarten and the candy was white. So what can you do? How can you check it? And so on. I think when you start at the university level, it's too late for all those who do not go to the university. There have been some problems. I've seen a very interesting British one. For people who in secondary school have no science, there is a program, Science and Society or something like that, which goes into what questions you should ask if you're told that, I don't know, vitamin E will make you 2 times stronger. So where does it come from? Who is the author? Is it confirmed by other things? I mean, it's a book, so I'm not going to go into that. The point is that we do not provide the people who leave our schools with a set of tools for facing the world. And I don't think the teachers, I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it like this. They're superb teachers. I mean, a lot of the people who end up in science at the university have met someone on their way who was different from the sort of standard teacher. But I was involved in a scientific project here at the Copernicus. They got European money to provide a sort of, well, not first aid kit for elementary schools, but a set of very simple implements, I don't know, batteries and voltmeters and whatnot, to do experiments in elementary schools. And they also had observers in the schools before to see what could be changed. The point is that a lot of teachers of those junior grades 3 and so on, they have a set idea what should come out of the experiment. If it doesn't work, you repeat it until it works. If a kid asks a question, he perturbs the class. And I mean, a few years of that, and there's no way they will want to do science. I mean, of course, there are exceptions. We still have students. There are still students in physics and geology and whatnot. But I truly don't know what to do with education because, well, in our current situation, there's not much we can do. It's being changed. I was involved in a 2009-2010 science program for schools where we put in compulsory experiments, where we put in the idea of science, but nothing's left of that. But there is essentially no way to convince an adult who will not listen to rational arguments that he's wrong. And I don't know what you do with that.
So just to try to answer your question about whether we should be teaching complex subjects to students, I think we should absolutely teach science to students, but we should find the right way to do it. And one of the examples for me is the theory of evolution. The main reason why evolution is not accepted, in my opinion, is that people don't understand it. They just reject it, and then if you come and ask them how does it work, they don't know. And this is why there's a need to explain theories as complex as the theory of evolution in very simple ways, and that's not easy at all. As one of the famous physicists, Richard Feynman, said, you only understand something if you're able to explain it to a 5-year-old. And this shows how hard it is to do that. So I would say absolutely, and I would also focus on the idea of teaching critical thinking again, because this is a tool that people can use for the rest of their lives. And if they don't have it early on, they wouldn't be able to really tell what's right and what's wrong.
All right. Well, if I can push everyone here a little bit on this topic further, right? Because, I mean, it's the reason why science works is not because scientists are special, right? There is a community, there are institutions that maintain certain norms of discussion, which ensures that progress on fundamental questions is achieved, right? At the same time, if we're going to be looking at science and religion, a lot of scientists are religious. And in most cases, that doesn't interfere with their science, so long as they are part of that scientific community, right? So the point I'm making is that it's not just a question of education, it's also a question of being in a particular community where there are particular norms, right? I mean, for example, my own area, cognitive science of religion, right? Everybody who comes to cognitive science of religion has very strong views about religion, right? That's why they're interested. And there are people who are very irreligious, and there are people who are very religious. But when it gets to the actual debate, then those questions are meant to be set aside, and to a great degree are set aside. I mean, I remember a particular case a number of years ago where I gave a talk on my work, and at the end of it, somebody came up to me and said, "Excuse me, are you religious?" And I said, "Well, you've just seen my talk, what do you think?" And they thought, and finally said, "I don't know." To which point I said, "Good," and changed the topic, right? So how would you say that, to have this kind of attitude, the right kind of approach to science doesn't just take education, it also takes social norms, which have to be built into social institutions, which is a much more difficult thing also. It's one level up,
Okay. I think we can't expect from scientists to declare be atheist or to be religious if he or she deals with some research on this topic. It's not a question, but I think many of you knows Professor Heller from Poland, which is a fabulous scientist, and he used to say that when he opened the door to his laboratory, he forgot about his religion, about his views, and whatever. And I think the problem is, how do you think about reality? If you do research and you think one variable could be a mystic or kind of spirit may interfere in your research results, you can't be a scientist. And a society of scientists, institution or a group of people should reject such people. because you can't think about reality as affected by irrational variables, but by something what you don't know whether it is exist or not. And I think this is the main point, and this is the main point in education. Okay, if you are, I understand tolerance as one of the greatest achievements of democracy, and I'm tolerate to people who are religious, but I don't tolerate their religiosity while doing research. So this is my opinion about it. And I don't tolerate when they teach biology or physics or other subjects. And one more point is the problem of science, because we are talking here about more hard science like physics, like biology and so on. I'm the psychologist, and this is one of social sciences. And in social sciences, the tolerance for irrational views is so huge, and it is affected by pseudoscience in such a scale that you even can't imagine. I devoted over 2 decades of my life to debunk it, and there are still a lot of work to do. So this is absolutely 2 words in science. Social sciences, as mentioned, Feynman used to say, is a cargo cult science, is something like this, and hard sciences like biology or physics.
You said social norms. I'm not quite sure whether it's not religious norms, because you sent the name of the organization you mentioned. I looked at some questionnaires concerning sort of how people view the world or understand science. The point is how you approach the religion, because I think, funnily enough, the Protestant religion in the United States is much more adamant about New World and New Earth and so on, whereas quite a lot of Catholics are, well, I'm not saying that it makes them love evolution, but they're not fundamentally against it. I think religion affects the worldview. I mean, what you find acceptable, what you don't find acceptable. And if that goes into science, I mean, I don't know, we have a lot of discussions now about changing the human genome and interventions and so on. And there, the religious viewpoint is extremely strong, and in a way it has to be. But the social norms, I mean, unless a social norm is what is used. So if you, I don't know, look at blogs or fan pages or whatever, and that affects your view, I'm a scientist. I don't know whether that is a social norm or not.
I don't have much to add about this particular topic, but I can go on and talk about other things. I think one very important, we're talking about the reason why people are losing faith in science, and I think a very important aspect that we haven't talked about is the rise of social media. This is a huge contributing factor to the spread of misinformation, and that's a very big problem we have. You know, before, in the past, everybody used to have an encyclopedia in their home, and whenever you need to look for a piece of information, you would go through the alphabet and find it. And then we had these CDs, Britannica, from encyclopedia, and then Google started. People were actually putting an effort to seek information. And now, after the rise of social media, people don't do this anymore. They just get the information. This is becoming a source of information for everybody. Even people, instead of doing a Google search, they just go to Facebook and type a certain word to see about a certain problem. I think this is a big problem, and this emphasizes something very important called the echo chambers. And this is a huge problem. An echo chamber is when people are sitting in a collective of other people where the same ideas are shared. For example, back when I was young, I used to go to a Muslim school, And my parents were Muslim. I used to live in a Muslim neighborhood, and I was never exposed to other ideas. And this is very problematic. And now it happens on social media, where people are doing the same, but in groups, in closed groups, where they are not exposed to other problems. So this, for me, is a new problem that's highly affecting the people's faith in science, and in particular misinformation.
All right, thank you very much. Just one example I wanted to mention about people who have non-scientific views and how they can't be scientists. I'm thinking of an example of a psychologist who, while she was doing her PhD, had an out-of-body experience and decided she was going to study out-of-body experiences, and her views were very much, non-scientific with regards to what the cause of that was, and she started studying this. But whenever she tried to look at various non-scientific explanations, she found that, well, they didn't work because her methodology was absolutely excellent. I think a lot of us here know who I'm talking about. Of course, I'm talking about Sue Blackmore, right? So to me, that is a very hopeful example that if somebody has the right methodology, they will end up with a scientific point of view, regardless, right?
I mean, this is a question of differences between parascience, pseudoscience, mainly between parascience and pseudoscience. Parascientists tries to understand reality with scientific methodology. He tries to understand paranormal phenomena using scientific methodology, and this is okay. Parapsychology, they do research for maybe now, they started in 1940s or 30s or something like this with scientific methodology. They didn't discover anything till now, but they still keep with methodology. And this is a parascience. What is pseudoscience? Pseudoscience, they do bogus research, or they falsify research results, or they don't do any research, they just maintain that they did research and discovered something. And this is pseudoscience, and pseudoscience is the worst enemy of science within scientific community. And that I said before, there are a lot of such pseudoscience within social sciences, especially within social sciences, because in physics they replicate research in one night, and the next day we know it was a fake. It was not a good research result. In biology, as Professor Ewa Bartnik said to me before this conversation, they are happy when someone confirms their result. In social sciences, especially in psychology, we are afraid if someone tries to check our research results. So the best situation is when we do research and nobody will ever check it. And that is why several years ago there was a replication crisis in psychology, especially, not only, because in medical sciences as well. And there were a big replication project done, and many scientists in my discipline, in my field, were offended by this project, because someone dared to check whether they did it properly. By the way, in one of the biggest projects were 100 experiments replicated, and only half of them get the same research results. So this shows you how is infected, how the social sciences are infected by pseudoscience, unfortunately.
Something that I just want to mention, because I think soon it will be time for your questions. There is something like overselling science in the media, which I think profoundly contributes to the lack of belief that science is doing something which is true. Especially in the pandemic, we've had all kinds of weird treatments for COVID-19 from France, from other places. We've had I don't remember what, and there was something that you shouldn't take, I don't know, say ibuprofen or aspirin or only some other drug, otherwise something would be bad, based on nothing. And in Poland, we have an additional problem of Polish scientists got a superb achievement which will cure humanity of whatever. The point is that facts should be checked, and science should not be oversold, because I don't remember what the substance was that was supposed to be so excellent in Polish and for treating COVID. It didn't work, and a lot of people got things that didn't work. So this is not really our fault, in the sense I'm not responsible for what other people sell to journalists or sell or tell, but I think people should verify. I mean, it is an extremely important thing that if a journalist publishes something which affects a lot of people, because if it's a new physical constant, most probably no one will read it. But if it's a drug for making you younger or for cancer or whatever, everyone will, and they will think it's true. And it's dangerous.
I can add something fast. Maybe I would add something to what Professor Thomas said. So one very dangerous phenomena that happens in the research industry, I'm going to call it industry for a specific reason, is the influence that politics and corporate have on the research. And one example I can give is the big, if you remember, the big pharmaceutical company Monsanto in the States a few years ago, when they were ghostwriting articles in support of their products, and then it was exposed over 1,000 papers that were peer-reviewed and published. They turned out to be just ghost-written by the company itself. And this is a big problem because this affects the trust of people in science when something like this happens, which brings us to our main discussion. Are people losing faith in science? When they see something like this, then they're going to think, oh, okay, then probably all the studies we are reading are also ghost-written or something like this. And also, of course, the effect of the government and the influence that politicians can have, like when somebody like Donald Trump goes and says that the global warming is just, there's no such thing as global warming. This has an effect on millions of people. So this is a very important point as well.
All right, yes, I think it's about time for questions. So I believe the rule is that people line up behind the microphones that are in the two aisles. While that's being set up, I'll just perhaps add that I think fundamentally what we're hearing is something that I've found also very much in my research, that science is really fundamentally social, right? And that if we want to understand science, we have to understand how those social processes work. All right, please.
I maybe have not that much of a question, but a comment that discussing about a critical thinking, we forget about being comfortable with uncertainty. And I think we cannot trust science without being comfortable with the uncertainty, because science changes. And when the scientist says something, then the other scientist can deny it. And how you think we can be more comfortable and more tolerant to uncertainty?
It's not really, I don't quite agree with what you said, because basic things in science are known. Now, also, if someone says that, I don't know, we had people saying that the HIV virus doesn't cause AIDS, and other people saying that it caused AIDS. There are questions you can ask. Who are the people? Do they represent themselves or some kind of additional interest, and so on and so forth? The science, a lot of science is quite certain. And I think most of the things that get to the public are either new discoveries which have not been confirmed, or what in Poland we call kaczka dziennikarska. I don't have a good name for it in English. No, I would say it's a duck, but not a fact, but a duck. But in any case, uncertainties for other things. I mean, if you're told that your risk of getting some kind of disease is 30%, that is uncertainty because you don't know. But most scientific facts are not uncertain. The ones which are communicated to the public and not just published in some journal as some new, I don't know, plant, molecule, or whatever.
The answer is in evidence-based practices. In evidence-based practices, we know that proofs, when data are in a certain hierarchy, and the lower level of this hierarchy is a subjective experience. The next level is case study. Next level is systematic observation. Next one, maybe I jump a little bit. Next one in an experiment and controlled, randomized, double-blinded experiment. And the highest level is meta-analysis. And we understand it. And we should teach people, teach audience and children when there is a level of hierarchy of proofs of data. This is a key. If we understand this hierarchy of proofs of data, we can deal with this problem.
You take a lot of results of, say, clinical trial, meta-analysis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry for my pronunciation.
So I would like to comment on that. Although there are problems in science and uncertainties, but I think the problem that you were describing is a problem of media, not a problem of science. And what I mean is that, you know how media are always eager to publish anything that would attract the audience. For example, in the past decade, I've seen tens of times articles saying that Einstein was proving wrong. He was never proven wrong, but they just see some studies and then they come up with some titles which would attract the audience, and then they would publish. And then the next day you'd see something that contradicts with that article. And then we think that scientists are contradicting each other, while what's happening is actually just authors and pop science authors are contradicting each other.
Okay, if I could add one thing to this discussion, because I actually think I would sort of agree with what has just been said by the questioner, in that where the science is interesting is where things are uncertain, right? I mean, I know a lot of us have this experience where we get new data and we look at it and we're going, yes, this makes sense, and suddenly you see something and you go, what the hell is going on here, right? All right, next question, please.
Hello. I think I heard a very important thing from you today, that the key issue is to present science and present what is science to the kids, to the 5 years old. Yeah, you said that thing. And I think this is the answer why Catholic Church is so insisting on the presence of religion in our schools, in our preschools, is that they understand that this is the key time gap for a mind of the kid. Of the mind of the kid to incept some thinking, incept some model of thinking. So my question is, how to do it? Because we, the Society of Atheists, are gathered here not only for talking to ourselves that this is bad, the situation is bad, but what can we do about this? What can we do about popularization of science in preschools, in schools? How to do it? How to do the thing that the science for the kids will be attractive, will be fun. You know, I'm a father of a 7-year-old boy, and I know that the boring thing isn't interesting. That must be attractive. The science must be attractive. What to do with that?
Yeah, so you discussed 2 points. First, the power of religion, and then how would they let us teach our children science if they know this is the start of, I don't know, losing religion or something like this? And the second point is how do we make science more interesting? So regarding the first thing, I mean, it depends on how strong the system is. If you go to extreme places in the Islamic world, if you cannot speak, then there's nothing to do. Then the change comes from a different, on a different level. Social change comes on a different level. But regarding how we can make science more interesting, I think we should start very early, 3 years old. I think many of you have seen these books, General Relativity for Babies and Quantum Physics for Babies. This is an excellent initiative. We need more of this, and we need science authors who are able to turn complex models and studies into very simple material. Yeah.
I can only say that neither of my kids became a scientist, so I probably did something wrong. But in fact, I think we don't have currently much that we can do. I go to schools when they ask me to come. I've never been to an elementary school because they don't ask scientists normally. I don't know.
One sentence only. If you want to understand how to make science interesting, just visit this center, and you will see how people do it. I think this is the best answer to this question.
Yes, but how many people can come from here to here?
Next question, please.
Thank you. It is important to inculcate an interest in science in little children. There's no question about that. I think alerts come when there are people who are scientists, but they are religious too. That's number one. Second is that the absence of scientific practice or science as we know it, even the absence of the scientific method, doesn't automatically imply the absence of rationality or even the absence of ethics, for that matter. So where I'm going with this is I wonder whether the target that we are really aiming for is not science per se, but the kind of thought, the kind of mental processes with which science is received, science is considered, and science is propagated. If we ask the question as we have, or if we pose the question as whether people believe in science or not, that for me is a fundamental error, that very formulation, because science is not about belief. Belief is a particular mental construct that is antithetical to science. And so you cannot restrict the inquiry into how science is brought to people. It's got to go to should I speak louder? No. Finish. Okay. All right. Yes. That's it. Thanks.
All right. Who wants to take that? Go for it.
I just fully agree with what you said.
All right. Well,
maybe a fast comment. I think the country with the least number of misinformation, according to recent statistics, is Finland. And by looking at the educational model of Finland, you would see that at early ages in school, they promote this way of thinking that you were talking about. There's a subject called critical thinking that they start learning as early as, I don't know exactly, but at school already.
Well, actually, about critical thinking, a colleague of mine did a study of various courses of critical thinking that have been put together. Unfortunately, the conclusions were rather negative. They didn't seem to achieve much of an effect. Mind you, I believe those courses were mostly at university level, so that might have been the issue, but I'm not convinced that it was.
Just short comment. As I said in my introduction, we should learn again, children and people and audience and public, the public about Aristotle's concept of truth. Reality exists, there is no alternative, and reality is knowable by empirical methodology. And the logic laws allow to formulate description of it. That's all, and there is no tolerance for different view on reality. That's the basis of science.
Next question, please.
Okay, so we talked a lot about education, and I'm currently finishing my high school. I'm in my last year of high school. And out of all my friends that choose science classes as their advanced classes, I'm the only one that actually wants to go into science. Most wants to be doctors or go into IT. And I think the biggest reason why is because when we are talked about scientists, we are talked about those genius people that solved extreme problems. And we think that we will never be good enough like them, like we can't be in that place. And is it possible that by taking scientists off of that pedestal, could we, let's say, form a trust between people and make them trust science more as just another work made by normal people that just work hard and learn throughout their whole lives?
After almost 50 years of teaching at the university, all I can say is that scientists, like anything else, is a Gaussian curve. We have a few geniuses, we have quite a few idiots, everyone else is in between. And the pedestal is artificial. I mean, you learn about the great names, I don't know, Galileo and Einstein and Marie Curie and whatnot, but most of the science gets done by the plodders, the people who put little bricks into the building. And I didn't know that there was this sort of pedestal structure. I mean, it's not justified because science progresses by steps. There are also jumps, of course. The ones you put on a pedestal are the ones who jumped, but they're the minority.
Right, perhaps next question.
People like my age who lived in the good old times of the Cold War were in a different society where there was some sort of common ground in approaching science. On both sides, we all wanted to be astronauts or cosmonauts, but we dreamt of doing something with science. Nowadays, I think that we are in a very ignorant society where the value of science as a promoting of a better life has been dropped together with the value of democracy. So people who question the actual situation, and especially I mean the left, today's left, have betrayed those values. What used to be scientific socialism is now anti-scientific socialism, and they are down to dispute the largest constituency, which is the ignorant people. So the more we seem to promote ignorance is the way that our today's left is betraying those values, and the right wing seems to be something like more consistent with their whole approach in terms of vaccines and so on. So I wanted to put this question to you. You feel, am I right with this view, like we moved from the Jetsons to the Flintstones?
I agree absolutely. This changed, and then I said before, the problem is also within science that this rate of growth of science is so fast now. So many discoveries, but now we can't follow all discoveries, all facts, and we must be lost in this variety of discoveries. So this is also a problem.
Next question, please.
I just wanted to maybe not be as pessimistic as Professor Bartnik said, that there is that we have no way of entering as a community of academics, that we have no way of entering the schools, because fortunately in Poland, for now at least, no one actually prevents us from doing that yet. So, but we, I have an appeal to the scientific community to actually to create some kind of tools for us to actually enter the small children's environment, because this is the only one that we can actually change. We will not change the adults, but actually, so I am a parent as well, and recently I've been to my children's kindergartens showing them experiments, and they were really, really excited about it. But before that, I was searching on the web in English predominantly, and in Polish also, for critical thinking for kindergartens, or scientific methods for children. There's no things you can base on to actually go there. Like there are no materials to do so. So I was hoping for organizations such as Rzecznicy Nauki to do such things, but rather than that, which I actually wrote them about, but rather than that, they actually put on videos of about Chinese medicine being as scientific as anything else. So yes, there are so many things I would like to say, but yes, so we can do that. We can go. We can talk to the kids, to the teachers, to the students of pedagogy, student teachers. And we can do that. We can try to show them that that science is not something that I am a scientist and I tell you that this is the truth, because this is religion.
I represent Polish Skeptics Club, and we had many contacts with skeptical organizations around Europe. And I know many people who do such things with children and do it excellently. And just contact me after this panel, and I will contact you with these people.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next question, please.
Unreason and controversy sells ads and is good business. Should we do anything to disincentivize this business?
This question seems to go back to the point that Sami was making about social media and the way that also really focuses people's attention on conflict, on death and dying, and all kinds of crises, right? And perhaps even crisis in science, I don't know. The question was, should we do something about it, right? And I suppose the next one being, well, how?
I think the best we can do is use the same tool. If we don't have access to education in some countries because it requires political change, we have access to social media. You don't need anything to do it. So, and to be honest, you have to speak the people's language. This is what people are doing these days. You have to use the same tools, and I mean, that's the best I can say. Maybe we can discuss it afterwards if you want.
Okay, so we've been talking about children, how to educate children, how to encourage them to critical thinking and so on, but I have a question about adults. What do we do about adults? There is no education system that could take care of them, so any ideas what to do with uneducated adults?
In larger cities, there are all kinds of lectures and meetings, museums and whatnot. If they want it, they can do it. There's no way to force an adult to do anything. And I think for some, how should I put it? My students used to have a conference every year, discussions about genetically modified organisms, for and against. About 3 or 4 years ago, before the pandemic, so maybe 5, I said, I won't do it anymore because it's a waste of time. I think it's also a waste of time to talk to flat earthers and people like that. Perhaps we should have a broader offer of products talking, I mean, lectures, films, and things about science, but I think if people want it, it's to be found, especially in larger places. And if it's not a large one, television and all kinds of programs do science. But I think that would be a fraction of the adult population, probably.
All right, please.
Yeah, hello. I just wanted to make one point. I mean, one point before I ask the question. I come from a generation that seems to be very easily offended on behalf of someone, not on my own behalf. And my question is it reversible? Because I think what we have now, the empathy for everyone, that's wonderful. And that is big progress, right, in the world, that we can be empathetic, that we can help each other out. But it's also very dangerous, and I'm quite frankly terrified sometimes of the direction where it's going on social media, on Twitter, where we cannot have discussion, and we do not have a right to ridicule not only religion, but, you know, some statements that may make someone question their identity, their ideas. So that's my question. Is it reversible? Can we somehow work with this? Can we make discussion great again? And yeah, I just wanted to say that I think in Poland, in our schools, there's a lack of wonder. The wonder Mr. Dawkins writes about. We have dry facts, we have dry science, and we just have to pass our exams. And that's it. And it's scary. There is no beauty in it, there is no magic. And I think that's one of the reasons that young people from my generation in their early 20s just do not want to lose that bit, that religion, that magical thinking situation. So I think first we have to work on our system and the exams and the testing because it's crap. Thank you.
If I may say something about this, right? The point that Tomasz has been making about postmodernism, I'm actually a lot more optimistic about the situation here, right? I sit very much within the social sciences, and I see postmodernist point of views all the time, yes. But two things. Number one, it seems like there are definite pockets where this survives, but fundamentally it seems like this is a worldview that has completely run out of steam and has nothing to offer science. Surprise, surprise, right? So I don't see that being as much of an issue in the science in the future. And some of the approaches, some of the values that we've been talking about in more general society that are potentially problematic for the various reasons we've discussed, which are sort of the third generation successes of those scientific or pseudo-scientific views. I suspect that they are also something that we will see waning, right? Now, as a social scientist, I have just very seriously stepped into very dangerous territory by making a prediction about the future. So I'll stop right now. All right, next question. If we have the time, do we have the time for last question? 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Michał Krupa. Let me introduce a little bit myself because I work for one of the most known publishers in the world, in scientific world, which is Elsevier. So I believe majority of you knows this company. And first I would like to say I'm sorry because of the Lancet publication at the end of 90s about anti-vaccination problems with autism at children. This comes from high scientific journal from the most trusted publisher in the world. So the story is that everybody makes mistakes. Yeah, our company recalled it back. So we, so this is fault. Even this high-level scientific people. Another story I would like to point out is the format of the scientific which is brought to society. Because, you know, scientists, there are different scientists. One of them have their mission and they want to discover something. Others want to build their position in the society, to be cited. And this is most important, yeah? And I believe the responsibility of the society is to bring this knowledge in the adaptive format to young people, yeah? Brilliant example is the book of Richard Dawkins of Magic Reality. I've read this book to my son when he was 9, and he was interested, yeah? But nowadays people, they are ready for short part of information, show videos like mnemonics. We call it mnemonics in our society. So this is important for scientists to bring the knowledge in attractive format to the society, I believe. Yeah.
I'm also a popularizer of science, and I write quite a lot of popular articles. Actually, I wrote them several hundred. And I try to do it quite well, and I have quite many readers, and they evaluate it as understandable writing. But I have many problems with magazines and with journals to be accepted. Why? Because I don't write what they expect from me. They expect bold titles, and they expect to write what confirm expectations of their readers. And this is a huge problem for me as a popularizer of science to publish really good scientific, maybe not scientific, popular science articles.
All right, well, we better finish it here. We could continue, but of course we have to. So thank you very much.